The morning of July 29, 1944, a dirt road 3 kilometers south of Roncy, France, SS Oberscharführer Kurt Becker sits in the commander's cupola of his Panzer IV, sweating despite the cool dawn. His eyes scan the horizon, not for American tanks, for aircraft. 3 days into Operation Cobra, and the Wehrmacht is collapsing. His company started with 14 panzers. Now, 5 remain. Not from tank battles, from above. Becker's radio operator, Weber, suddenly grabs his shoulder. There, high, maybe 2,000 meters, black dots against the grey morning sky. 4 of them. Republic P-47 Thunderbolts. Becker knows this because he has seen them before. 2 days ago, they destroyed his battalion commander's command vehicle in 11 seconds. Yesterday, they caught a supply column on the road to Coutances. 17 trucks incinerated. The sound, Becker will later write, is what terrifies him most. Not the scream of diving, not the explosion of rockets. The guns. 8 Browning M2 machine guns, each spitting 12.7mm rounds at roughly 800 rounds per minute. Combined rate of fire, approximately 3,400 rounds per minute. That is 57 bullets every single second. When a P-47 opens fire, the sound is not like a machine gun burst. It is like tearing metal, continuous, overwhelming, final. The first Thunderbolt rolls into its dive. Becker screams into the radio. Disperse! Off the road. The panzers lurch forward, drivers gunning engines, desperate to reach the tree line 50 meters ahead. They do not make it. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. The lead, P-47, opens fire at 600 meters. Becker hears it before he sees it. That terrible ripping sound. Then, the impacts. Tracer rounds. Every 5th bullet, paint lines of light from sky to earth. The rest are invisible. Armor-piercing incendiary. They slam into Becker's panzer like sledgehammers. The rear deck, the engine compartment, the thin 20mm armor over the radiators. He feels each hit through the hull, transmitted as sharp metallic cracks. The second Thunderbolt follows. More fire. The panzer behind Becker explodes. Not a penetration. The fuel tank, a single incendiary round, found the filler cap, ignited vapors, and the entire vehicle erupted in flame. 3 crewmen bail out. 2 are cut down by the third P-47 as it makes its strafing run. The 4th Thunderbolt targets Becker's vehicle. He drops into the turret, slams the hatch. The world becomes nothing but sound. Bullets hammering the armor. Some ricochet with high, singing whines. Others punch through the engine deck. His radio explodes in sparks. The intercom goes dead. Then silence. The Thunderbolts are gone. Climbing back to altitude, circling, looking for more targets, Becker opens the hatch. Smoke everywhere. His panzer is dead. Engine destroyed. 2 other vehicles burning. The remaining 2 panzers sit motionless. Crews, too terrified to move, knowing if they start their engines the sound will bring the aircraft back. Becker climbs out. His hands shake. He served in Russia. Kursk, the Dnieper, he has faced T-34s at 300 meters, Soviet artillery barrages. None of it prepared him for this, for being hunted from above by machines that carry such unimaginable firepower. That night, in a hastily scribbled report to what remains of his regimental headquarters, Becker writes, "We cannot fight them. We cannot hide from them. When they see us, we die. It is that simple." He does not yet know the Americans call these aircraft jugs, short for juggernaut, or that German tankers across Normandy are learning the same bitter lesson he just learned. The P-47 Thunderbolt, with its 8 50 caliber machine guns, has become the most feared weapon in the European theater. Not the most elegant, not the most advanced, but the most devastating. This is the story of how a principle so simple it seems almost obvious, overwhelming firepower delivered with absolute reliability, changed the nature of armored warfare. How American pilots flying an aircraft originally designed for high-altitude interception became tank hunters, and how German soldiers trained to fear Soviet artillery and British armor, learned a new kind of terror, the sound of 57 bullets per second tearing through steel. Washington, D.C., May 1941. The Republic Aviation Corporation submits to the United States Army Air Corps a design for a new fighter aircraft. On paper, it looks absurd. Empty weight, 4,500 kilograms, over 2 tons, heavier than the Messerschmitt Bf-109, larger than most twin-engine aircraft. The engineering team calls it the P-47 Thunderbolt. Test pilots call it the Jug. Critics call it a dinosaur. Alexander Kartveli, Republic's chief designer, does not care what people call it. He is Georgian. He fled the Bolsheviks. He understands one fundamental truth about war machines. They must work when everything else is broken. The P-47 is built around a single philosophy. Make it strong, make it powerful, make it simple enough that it keeps flying when shot full of holes. At the heart sits the Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine. 18 cylinders, 2,000 horsepower, the same engine that powers the Navy's F-6F Hellcat and F-4U Corsair. But in the P-47, it is mated to an advanced turbo supercharger. The result, an aircraft that can fly at 9,000 meters and still have power to spare. The fuselage is deep, massively deep. The turbo supercharger and its ducting require space. So does armor. The pilot sits in an armored cockpit, half-inch steel plates front and rear, armored glass windscreen, self-sealing fuel tanks. In an era when fighter design prizes speed and maneuverability over everything else, Kartveli chooses survivability and firepower. 8 Browning AN-M2 50 caliber machine guns. 4 in each wing. Each gun carries between 300 to 400 rounds. Total ammunition load over 3,300 rounds. At full burst, the aircraft fires approximately 57 rounds per second. For comparison, the Supermarine Spitfire carries 8 .303 caliber machine guns, excellent for attacking aircraft, less effective against ground targets. The FW-190 carries 2 20mm cannons and 2 13mm machine guns, devastating in short bursts, limited by small ammunition reserves. The P-47 carries sheer volume. 50 caliber rounds are large, 12.7mm, heavy. A single round weighs roughly 115 grams. Muzzle velocity, 860 meters per second. Muzzle energy, over 18,000 joules. In armor-piercing form, these rounds can penetrate approximately 19 millimeters of steel at 500 meters. That does not sound like much. A Tiger tank's frontal armor is 100 millimeters, a Panther's 80. But German armor has weak points. Engine decks, 20 to 25 millimeters. Radiator grills, open to airflow. Side armor on a Panzer IV, 50 millimeters on early models, 30 on the sides. Rear armor, everywhere, 20 to 30 millimeters. And most important, vision ports, hatches, cooling fans, the places where metal must be thin or absent. The P-47 does not need to penetrate frontal armor. It attacks from above, from behind. It rakes a target with dozens, sometimes hundreds of rounds in a single pass. Even a heavily armored Panther has vulnerabilities. The Americans understand something the Europeans, fixated on caliber and penetration tables, miss. Volume of fire matters. A single 20mm cannon hit might kill a tank, but 8 50 caliber machine guns firing together create a storm of metal that finds every weak point, every gap, every vulnerability. It is not surgical, it is overwhelming. March 1943. The P-47 arrives in Britain, 8th Air Force, 56th Fighter Group. Its mission, high-altitude bomber escort, protect the B-17s and B-24s on their daylight raids deep into Germany. The pilots are skeptical. The aircraft is huge, climb rate inferior to the Spitfire, turn radius wider than the Bf-109. But it has advantages. Speed in a dive, exceptional. Roll rate, excellent. Ruggedness, unmatched. And once pilots learn to use its strengths, slashing attacks from high altitude, boom and zoom tactics, it proves deadly in air-to-air combat. By late 1943, the P-47 has earned respect as a fighter, but the true revelation comes in the ground attack role. Major Glenn Duncan, 353rd Fighter Group is one of the first to experiment. A Texan, aggressive, colorful, the kind of officer who leads from the front. In March 1944, with D-Day approaching, Duncan requests permission to test low-level strafing tactics, find 16 volunteers, take Thunderbolts down to the deck, learn how they perform attacking ground targets. The results exceed expectations. The P-47's weight, once seen as a liability, becomes an asset. A heavy aircraft is stable. It does not bounce around in turbulence. At low altitude, threading between trees and hills, stability matters. The armor, it keeps pilots alive. Ground fire that would shred a lighter fighter causes manageable damage to a Thunderbolt. Engines shot up, continue running. Hydraulics fail. Pilots fly home manually. Control surfaces torn. The aircraft stays airborne. And the guns. Against trains, against trucks, against fuel depots, and ammunition dumps and parked aircraft, 8 .50 caliber machine guns prove devastating. A single strafing pass can destroy an entire convoy. Duncan's volunteers return from 5 missions. They have perfected the technique: dive from altitude, build speed, open fire at 600 to 800 meters, walk the tracers onto target, pull up and away before ground fire becomes accurate. Repeat, the tactics spread. By June 1944, most P-47 groups in Britain are trained for ground attack. The plan for D-Day includes close air support. The Thunderbolts will not just escort bombers. They will attack the German defenders, soften positions, destroy reinforcements before they reach the beaches, and, most critically, hunt armor. June 6, 1944. The invasion begins. Normandy beaches. By afternoon, Allied forces are ashore but pinned down. German strongpoints resist. Panzer reserves begin moving toward the coast. The weather is poor. Low clouds. Rain. But the Thunderbolts fly anyway. Squadrons rotate. Some escort bombers. Others prowl the roads behind German lines searching for targets. Lieutenant Richard Keewan, 353rd Fighter Group, describes his first ground attack mission. We found a column south of Carrington, maybe 20 trucks, 2 half-tracks. They were moving slowly, trying to stay under trees. We came in from the west, 4 aircraft in trail. Lead opens up at 700 meters. I watch his tracers chew through the lead truck. It just disintegrates. Pieces flying. Then the second truck starts burning. I fire. The recoil shakes the whole aircraft. My rounds hit a half-track. I see sparks, impacts, stitching up its side. It swerves, stops. Men bail out. I'm already past. Pulling up. 3rd and 4th aircraft in our flight hit the rear of the column. The whole thing is burning by the time we climb back to altitude. Total time, roughly 40 seconds. Total ammunition expended, approximately 800 rounds. Confirmed destroyed, 11 trucks, 3 half-tracks. Approximate enemy casualties, 60 to 80 soldiers. The cost, 0 American aircraft lost. This pattern repeats across Normandy. P-47's catch German columns on open roads. Attack concentrations near villages. Strike supply dumps. Each mission reinforces a lesson the Wehrmacht is learning in blood. Daylight movement is suicide. By mid-June, German forces are moving only at night, hiding by day, paralyzed by Allied air superiority. But the real killing begins with Operation Cobra. July 25th, 1944, the American breakout offensive. After 6 weeks of grinding combat in the bocage, the hedgerow country, General Omar Bradley launches a massive assault. The plan: saturate a narrow front with overwhelming firepower, shatter the German line, pour armor through the gap. The aerial bombardment is the heaviest of the war. Over 2,400 bombers and fighter bombers strike German positions. The P-47's are everywhere, dive bombing, strafing, attacking anything that moves. The German defense, already weakened, collapses. By July 27th, American armored divisions are racing south, the 2nd Armored, the 3rd Armored, exploiting the breakthrough, cutting behind German units, trapping entire formations, and the Thunderbolts follow, orbiting above the advancing columns, waiting for targets, finding them. July 28th to 29th, 1944. Near the village of Ronce, approximately 10 kilometers inland from the coast, a catastrophe unfolds for the Wehrmacht. Remnants of multiple German divisions, 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich, 17th SS Panzer Grenadier Division, elements of the 91st Luftlandedivision Division, attempt to retreat south, establish a new defensive line, avoid encirclement. They fail. American armor cuts the roads. The 2nd and 3rd Armored Divisions establish blocking positions, hundreds of German vehicles, tanks, self-propelled guns, half-tracks, trucks, crowd into a pocket roughly 5 kilometers across. They cannot go forward. American roadblocks. They cannot stay. American artillery. They must break out. At night, German commanders organize a relief column. Lead vehicle. A Hummel, self-propelled gun named Clausewitz. Behind it, roughly 90 vehicles, 2,500 Waffen-SS troops. The plan, smash through American lines at Notre-Dame-de-Senilly, escape south. The column moves at midnight, July 28th. Headlights off, moving by feel along narrow hedgerow-lined roads. It advances perhaps 2 kilometers, then hits a roadblock. Company Y, 41st Armored Infantry Regiment, 2nd Armored Division, a handful of American soldiers with a 57mm anti-tank gun, bazookas, and small arms. The Hummel, leading, does not expect resistance. The Americans open fire. The SP gun stops, blocks the road. The column behind, unable to see, unable to maneuver in the dark, confined by hedgerows, stacks up, vehicle after vehicle, nose to tail. The Americans call in artillery, mortars. The German column, trapped, tries to fight. Infantry dismount, attempt to flank the roadblock. The battle becomes savage. Close range, grenades, machine guns, hand-to-hand fighting. At one point, Sergeant Hulon Whittington leads a bayonet charge that drives German infantry back into the column. Dawn arrives. The column is still jammed on the road. Engines running, fuel burning, ammunition cooking off from fires. Then the Americans call in air support. Morning, July 29th. A forward air controller with the 2nd Armored Division radios 9 Tactical Air Command. Target, vehicle column near Notre-Dame-de-Senilly. Coordinates provided. Within 15 minutes, the first P-47's arrive. 4 aircraft, 4 and 5 fighter group. The pilots see immediately what they have found. A perfect target. A column triple-banked on a narrow road. Vehicles unable to move. Nowhere to hide. One pilot will later describe it as a fighter pilot's paradise. The first flight attacks with bombs, 500-pounders, 2 bombs per aircraft. They do not need precision. The column is so dense that near misses are hits. Explosions bracket the road. Half-tracks flip. Trucks disintegrate. Fires start. The P-47's climb back to altitude. Orbit. Wait for the next flight. More Thunderbolts arrive. These carry rockets. High-velocity aircraft rockets, HVARs, nicknamed Holy Moses. Each 5-inch rocket has the impact of a 105mm artillery shell. The P-47's can carry 10. They dive. Fire. The rockets streak down, leaving white smoke trails. Impact. More explosions. Then come the gun runs. Flight after flight of Thunderbolts. 4 aircraft at a time. They dive from 1,500 meters. Build speed, 500 kilometers per hour, 600. At 800 meters, they open fire, all 8 guns. The sound, audible even over the engine and wind, is like an industrial saw cutting metal. 57 rounds per second. The tracers look like solid bars of light. The pilots aim for the densest concentrations, tanks, SP guns, half-tracks with their thin armor and fuel tanks. The 50 caliber rounds tear through everything, engine decks, side armor, vision ports. German soldiers describe the sound as unbearable. Not individual shots, a continuous roar, like standing inside a foundry when they pour steel. Those caught in the open are cut down instantly. Those inside vehicles huddle, praying the armor holds. Often it does not. Armor-piercing incendiary rounds penetrate. Fuel ignites. Ammunition explodes. A Panzer IV is hit in the rear deck. The 50 caliber rounds punch through the 20mm armor over the engine. One finds the fuel tank. Fire. The crew bails. A Stuggy 3 SP gun takes hits along its side. Multiple rounds strike the same general area. The armor, weakened, cracks. A round penetrates. Interior fire. The vehicle burns. For 6 hours, the attacks continue. Flights. Rotate. Land. Rearm. Return. The Ronsi pocket becomes an inferno. Vehicles burn. Ammunition dumps explode. Men try to flee on foot, scatter into fields, are hunted by circling aircraft. By afternoon, it is over. British Hawker Typhoons also attacked, using rockets and 20mm cannons, but the majority of the destruction is American. P-47 Thunderbolts, 8 50 caliber machine guns, thousands upon thousands of rounds. July 30th. The pocket is cleared. American forces move through. Count the wreckage. The official tally from the 405th Fighter Group: 66 tanks destroyed, 204 vehicles, 11 artillery pieces, total German casualties, approximately 1,500 dead or wounded, 4,000 captured. The roads are impassable, destroyed vehicles everywhere, in some places 3 vehicles deep. The 3rd Armoured Division's engineers need tank dozers to push hulks off the road so columns can advance. German survivors are interrogated. Their accounts are consistent. The air attacks were the worst, worse than artillery, worse than ground combat. They could not fight back, could not hide, could only wait and hope they were not the next target. SS Obersturmführer Fritz Langanker, 2nd SS Panzer Division, is one of the few German officers to lead his unit out of the pocket. He fights a running battle for 2 days, loses most of his vehicles. In an interview decades later, he recalls, "The P-47's were everywhere. You heard them before you saw them. That sound, the engines, then the guns. We tried to hide under trees. They found us. We tried to move at night. They had flares, illuminated the whole area, then attacked. By the 2nd day, we were not fighting to win, just to survive." Ronsi is not an isolated incident. It is a pattern. Throughout late July and early August, similar scenes repeat across Normandy. P-47's catch German columns, retreating, destroy them. At La Baleine, 9 tanks, 20 other vehicles. Near Mortagne, an entire panzer company. On the roads east toward the Seine, the carnage is even worse. Thousands of vehicles, tens of thousands of soldiers, all hunted from above. German troops, coin a term, Jabberschreck, fighter bomber, terror. It is not courage they lack. Wehrmacht soldiers fought with desperate determination, but courage, discipline, training. None of it matters when 57 bullets per second are ripping through your vehicle from above, and there is nothing you can do but die. And this is what Kurt Becker realized that morning outside Ronsi. What thousands of German tankers realized across France in the summer of 1944. The rules have changed. Armor once made you powerful. Now it makes you a target. The best tank in the world is helpless against an aircraft it cannot shoot, and the P-47 Thunderbolt, with its 8 50 caliber machine guns, rewrites what firepower means. To understand why the P-47 became so devastating, you must understand what 50 caliber firepower actually means on a battlefield. This is not abstract. This is physics, metallurgy, the simple mathematics of energy transfer. A single Browning M2 50 caliber machine gun fires at approximately 800 rounds per minute. That is 13 rounds per second. The P-47 carries 57 rounds per second combined. Each round is a projectile weighing 115 grams, traveling at 860 meters per second. When it impacts, it delivers over 18,000 joules of kinetic energy. For comparison, a professional boxer's punch delivers roughly 400 joules. A 50 caliber round hits with 45 times that force, concentrated into an area the diameter of your thumb. Armor-piercing rounds have a hardened steel core. They do not expand on impact. They punch through, clean holes through steel plate up to 19 millimeters thick at 500 meters. But raw penetration is only part of the story. The Americans use 3 types of ammunition in the P-47's guns: armor-piercing, armor-piercing incendiary and armor-piercing incendiary tracer. The standard load is a mix. Every fifth round a tracer, so the pilot can see where his fire is going. The rest, split between AP and API, the incendiary rounds, contain a small charge that ignites on impact against trucks, fuel tanks, ammunition, anything flammable. They are catastrophic. German tankers learn this quickly. A direct hit to the engine deck might not penetrate the main armor, but the cooling louvers, the air intakes, the exhaust. These are gaps. A 50 caliber round enters through a cooling fan grill, strikes the radiator, coolant sprays, the engine overheats, or it hits a fuel line. Fire starts. The incendiary compound ensures it. The crew has perhaps 30 seconds to bail out before the fire reaches the ammunition. The volume matters more than individual hits. A single cannon round from a Typhoon might destroy a tank with one perfect hit. But cannon ammunition is limited. 20mm cannons carry perhaps 150 rounds per gun. Fire in bursts. Aim carefully. The P-47 pilot does not need to aim carefully. He has 3,300 rounds total. He can afford to spray, to walk his fire across a target, to saturate an area. Then when a P-47 makes a gun run, it typically fires for 3 to 4 seconds. In that time, roughly 200 rounds hit the target area. Not all strike the tank itself. Many hit the ground around it, but even a dozen hits are enough. 1 penetrates the engine deck, 3 punch through side armor, 2 find a vision port, 1 ignites a fuel leak. The tank dies, not from a single catastrophic hit, but from accumulated damage that makes it inoperable. The German tanks of 1944 were, on paper, formidable machines. The Panther, the Tiger, even the upgraded Panzer IV. Frontal armor, thick enough to shrug off most Allied tank guns at range. Powerful cannons, good optics, experienced crews, but they were designed for a different kind of war. Tank versus tank combat, frontal engagements where the thickest armor faces the enemy. They were not designed for air attack. The Panzer IV AUSF-H, the most common German tank in Normandy, had 80mm of frontal armor, angled, effective, but the side armor was only 30mm, the rear 20, the top of the hull 10 to 16mm. The engine deck, the area directly over the Maybach engine, was 20 to 25mm of armor plate with large, cooling grills cut through it. An aircraft attacking from above does not hit frontal armor, it hits the top. And 50 caliber armor-piercing rounds, diving at a steep angle, can penetrate 25mm of steel. Not always, not reliably, but with 200 rounds hitting the same general area. Probability favors penetration. Even if the main armor holds, the vulnerable points do not. The fan grills, exhaust pipes, the gap between turret and hull, hatch hinges, vision slits. The Panther was better protected. The engine deck was thicker, 40mm in places, but it still had cooling fans, air intakes, and the sides, despite the famous Schürzen armor skirts, thin, 5mm steel plates hung on rails, were vulnerable. The Schürzen were designed to defeat anti-tank rifle rounds and shape charges. They did nothing against 50 caliber AP rounds. The bullets punched straight through, then hit the 30mm side armor behind. Often they penetrated that too. Even the Tiger, with its legendary armor, had weaknesses. The commander's cupola, the turret roof, 25mm, the rear deck, and most critically, the engine compartment. The Tiger's Maybach HL-230 engine was powerful but temperamental. It overheated easily, required massive cooling. The rear deck was essentially a grill. A P-47 pilot aiming at the rear of a Tiger could fire into what was effectively an open target. Rounds entered the engine bay, struck fuel lines, radiators, the engine itself. There are documented cases of P-47's disabling Tigers, not by penetrating the main armor, by hitting the engine until it failed. A Tiger with a dead engine is not a tank. It is a pillbox, immobile, useless for offensive operations. The Germans often destroyed such vehicles themselves rather than leave them for capture. But the real vulnerability was not any single tank type. It was the German logistics system. Tanks need fuel, ammunition, spare parts. All of this moves by truck. And trucks have no armor. A supply column caught on an open road by P-47's is destroyed in minutes, every vehicle burning. The fuel never reaches the front. The panzers sit out of gas, waiting for resupply that never comes. This happened constantly in Normandy. After the Roncy pocket, one captured German logistics officer was interrogated by American intelligence. He stated, "We no longer plan for how much fuel the tanks need. We plan for how much we will lose to your aircraft." The answer is most of it, sometimes all. The P-47's effectiveness forced both sides to change tactics. The Germans adapted first. By early August 1944, movement doctrine was simple: do not move during daylight. Period. Armored units dispersed, hid under trees, camouflaged vehicles individually, moved only after dusk. Even then, they feared night-flying aircraft with flares. But night movement is slow. A panzer company that can cover 40 kilometers in 2 hours during the day might take 6 hours at night. No headlights, drivers using moonlight or walking guides, frequent stops to avoid losing contact. The result? German operational tempo collapsed. Planned counterattacks launched hours late. Reinforcements arrived piecemeal. The entire command structure, built on rapid maneuver, became paralyzed. The Americans, meanwhile, perfected the integration of air and ground forces. Each armored division had air liaison officers. They rode in tanks at the front, carried radios tuned to fighter frequencies. When the ground forces encountered resistance, a strong point, an enemy column, the liaison officer called for air support. Average response time, 15 to 20 minutes, often faster. P-47's began operating in what they called cab ranks, flights of 4 aircraft orbiting at designated points. Ready to respond, a ground controller would radio coordinates, the flight leader would acknowledge. Dive, attack, report results, climb back to altitude. If needed, additional flights would follow. The system was devastatingly efficient. General George Patton, commanding Third Army during the breakout from Normandy, relied on this system completely. His armored columns advanced with P-47's overhead. The aircraft scouted ahead, reported enemy positions, attacked strong points before the ground forces arrived. Patton wrote in his diary, August 1944, "The 9th Air Force is winning this war for me. My tanks would be stopped by every hedgerow if the Thunderbolts did not clear the way. The Germans fear these aircraft more than they fear our armor. I do not blame them." The statistics from Operation Cobra tell part of the story. From D-Day until VE Day, P-47 pilots claimed to have destroyed 86,000 railroad cars, 9,000 locomotives, 6,000 armored fighting vehicles, 68,000 trucks. These numbers are claims, not confirmed kills. Combat reports are notoriously inflated. Pilots see an explosion, assume destruction. Multiple pilots attack the same target, all claim it. Post-war analysis suggests the real numbers are perhaps half the claims. Still staggering. 3,000 armored vehicles, 45,000 trucks, 4,500 locomotives. But even these revised numbers miss the real impact, the terror, the paralysis, the way the mere presence of P-47's overhead froze German movement. A panzer company commander outside Mortain described it. "We waited for 2 days to move forward 8 kilometers, not because of American tanks, because of aircraft. Every time we started engines, someone would spot a P-47. We would shut down, hide, wait. The aircraft would orbit, eventually leave. We would wait longer to be certain. Then try again. It took us 2 days to move 8 kilometers. By the time we reached the position we were supposed to attack, the Americans had already taken it." The psychological effect was cumulative. German soldiers had faced Soviet Sturmovix, heavily armored ground attack aircraft, dangerous but vulnerable to flak. The P-47 was different. It attacked from higher altitude, dove faster, was harder to hit, and carried such firepower that a single pass could destroy a vehicle. Survivors reported feeling helpless, Unable to fight back effectively, Wehrmacht commanders tried various countermeasures, increased anti-aircraft guns. The 20mm Flak-Vierling, quad-barreled 20mm AA gun mounted on a half-track, was deadly when it could engage. But there were never enough, and a P-47 diving at 600 kilometers per hour, firing from 800 meters, could destroy a flak position before the gun crew could track it. The Americans learned to target flak guns first, suppress AA, then attack the rest of the column. Some German units tried decoys, burned out vehicles left on roads to draw attacks. Sometimes it worked, but P-47 pilots quickly learned to identify fresh kills versus old wrecks. The Americans also developed tactics to counter decoys. Lead aircraft would strafe suspected targets. If there was no secondary explosion, no fire, probably a wreck. If ammunition cooked off, genuine target. Either way, the Germans wasted resources on elaborate deception that had limited effect. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. Understanding what the Germans experienced requires reading their own accounts. After the war, Allied intelligence teams interviewed hundreds of Wehrmacht officers. The reports, declassified decades later, reveal a pattern. Almost universally, German commanders cite Allied air superiority as the decisive factor in Normandy. More than American tanks, more than artillery. The aircraft, General Lieutenant Fritz Bayerlein, commander of Panzer Lehr Division, one of Germany's elite armored formations, gave a detailed interview in 1946. His division was effectively destroyed in Operation Cobra. He stated, "The American aircraft, particularly the P-47, were omnipresent. We could not move. We could not resupply. We could not execute even simple tactical movements without being attacked." On July 25th, during the bombardment that started Cobra, my division lost 30% of its combat power in 6 hours. Not from the bombers. From the fighter bombers that came after. They hunted every vehicle, every soldier caught in the open. By July 28th, my division was combat ineffective, not defeated by American ground forces, destroyed from the air. SS Brigade Führer Kurt Meyer, commander of the 12th SS Panzer Division, described similar experiences. The P-47 was the weapon we feared most. A Tiger tank is formidable in combat against other tanks, but a Tiger cannot shoot down an aircraft, cannot hide from it. The engine is so loud that aircraft can find us by sound alone. Once spotted, the P-47 would call others. Within minutes, 6 or 8 aircraft would be attacking. We lost more Tigers to air attack in Normandy than to enemy tank fire. This is not an exaggeration. Our own records confirm it. Oberst Hans von Luck, commander of the 125th Panzer Grenadier Regiment, 21st Panzer Division, wrote in his memoirs, "The sound of a P-47's guns is unlike anything else. You do not hear individual shots. It is a raw, continuous. When they attack, you can only hide and pray." I saw a P-47 attack a Panther, and the aircraft made 3 passes. The first set the engine on fire. The second killed the crew as they tried to bail out. The third was unnecessary, but the pilot fired anyway. We counted over 40 hits on that single tank. It looked like it had been through a shredder. These are not propaganda. These are experienced combat officers. After the war, with no reason to lie. Their accounts consistently described the P-47 as the most feared weapon in the Allied arsenal. Not the most deadly in absolute terms, artillery killed more, but the most psychologically devastating, because it was unpredictable, unavoidable, and absolutely overwhelming when it struck. The P-47's success in ground attack was not accidental. It resulted from specific design features that made the aircraft ideal for the role. First, survivability. The radial engine, air-cooled, 18 cylinders arranged in 2 rows around a central crankshaft. If one cylinder is damaged, the engine continues running on 17. If 3 are damaged, it runs on 15. Reduced power, but still flyable. Compare this to liquid-cooled inline engines like the Rolls-Royce Merlin in the P-51 Mustang or the Daimler-Benz in the Bf-109. A single hit that ruptures the coolant system and the engine overheats. Seizes within minutes. The aircraft must land immediately or the pilot bails out. The P-47's radial engine tolerates massive damage. There are documented cases of P-47s returning to base with 3 or 4 cylinders completely destroyed. Still flying, still controllable. The airframe itself is built heavy. Structural members are oversized. The pilots joke that the wings are so thick you could walk on them. This is not far from truth. The wing structure is robust enough to handle high-G maneuvers even when damaged. Flak holes that would cripple a lighter aircraft are repairable battle damage on a Thunderbolt. The aircraft can absorb punishment and keep flying. Second, the weapon system. 8 50 caliber guns is not just about firepower, it is about redundancy. If 2 guns jam, a common occurrence with any machine gun, the pilot still has 6 working. If wing damage disables guns on one side, he still has 4 on the other. The ammunition supply is large enough for multiple attack runs. A typical mission might involve 3 or 4 gun runs, 4 seconds of fire each, total ammunition expenditure. Perhaps 1,500 rounds still leaves ammunition for self-defense or additional attacks. The guns are also easy to reload and service. Ground crews can rearm a P-47 in approximately 30 minutes, faster if rushed. Compared to aircraft with cannons, which require more careful loading of larger, heavier shells, the 50 caliber machine gun is simple. Belts of ammunition, feed them into the gun bays, close the panels, done. This high sortie rate means the same aircraft can fly multiple missions per day. Attack, land, refuel and rearm. Attack again. Some P-47 units in Normandy flew 4 sorties per day. Sustained. Third, the doctrine. American pilots received extensive training in ground attack, not an afterthought, a primary mission. They practiced skip bombing, releasing bombs at low altitude so they skip into targets like railroad tunnels. They learned to identify vehicle types from the air, distinguish friend from foe, call in accurate coordinates for artillery, work with forward air controllers. This level of integration between air and ground forces was unprecedented. The Germans never achieved it. The Luftwaffe and Wehrmacht operated as separate services with minimal coordination. Consider a single P-47 attacking a German column. The pilot spots the target from 1,500 meters altitude. He rolls into a dive, shallow angle, perhaps 30 degrees, to keep the target in sight and control the speed. Throttle back. Use dive brakes if needed. The P-47 accelerates to approximately 600 kilometers per hour. At 800 meters from target, he opens fire. Distance from target decreases rapidly. 800 meters, 700, 600. He is firing continuously. The gun sight, a simple reflector sight, puts a lighted reticle on the target. He adjusts his aim. The tracers help. Every 5th round glows. He can see where his fire is going. Adjust left, adjust right. Walk the tracers onto the target. At 400 meters, he releases the trigger, pulls back on the stick. The G-forces push him into the seat. 4G, 5G, the aircraft climbs. The dive brake extends to control speed. He's back at altitude. Total time firing, approximately 4 seconds. Rounds fired, roughly 230. All 8 guns, combined. Those rounds impact an area approximately 15 by 30 meters. If the target is a vehicle, many rounds hit it or immediately around it. If the target is a truck, it is destroyed. If a tank, some rounds strike armor, some hit weak points, some miss entirely. But the probability that at least a few find a vulnerable spot, engine deck, vision port, hatch, is very high. Now multiply this by 4 aircraft in a flight, then multiply by the number of flights attacking the same target over 6 hours, as happened at Ronsi. The cumulative firepower is staggering. Thousands upon thousands of rounds, hitting every vehicle multiple times, starting fires, destroying engines, killing crews. The targets cannot move, cannot disperse fast enough, can only endure and hope. This is industrial warfare. Not the skilled duel of tank aces, not the precision of sniper fire. This is the application of overwhelming firepower to achieve absolute destruction. The Americans do not try to be elegant. They do not need to be. They have the resources, the aircraft, the ammunition, the trained pilots. They use all of it. By early August 1944, the German position in Normandy is collapsing. The breakout from the beachhead is complete. American armored divisions are racing east and south. Patton's Third Army is operational. The British and Canadians are pushing south from Caen. The Wehrmacht is in full retreat, trying to escape across the Seine before the Allies encircle them. The retreat becomes a slaughter. The roads east are choked with vehicles, thousands of trucks, horse-drawn carts, tanks towing broken tanks, artillery pieces, supply wagons, all moving toward the river crossings, and the P-47's hunt them. Entire squadrons orbit the roads. When one flight runs out of ammunition, another takes its place. Continuous attacks from dawn to dusk. The Falaise Pocket, mid-August, the largest encirclement of the Normandy campaign, 250,000 German soldiers, approximately 2,000 armored vehicles, caught in a pocket roughly 20 kilometers across, Allied forces closing from north, south, and west, the only escape route, a narrow gap to the east, through which the entire 7th German Army attempts to flee. The P-47's attack this gap relentlessly. Every vehicle trying to escape runs a gauntlet of airstrikes. The roads become graveyards. Burned-out trucks every few meters, dead horses, shattered wagons, Panzerhulks. The Germans abandon equipment, try to escape on foot. Even then, the aircraft strafe infantry columns. It is not war as the Germans understand it. It is extermination. Approximately 50,000 German soldiers escape the Falaise Pocket, most without their equipment. 200,000 are captured, 10,000 are killed. The majority of the material losses, vehicles, tanks, artillery, are destroyed by air attack. Post-battle analysis by Allied intelligence estimates that P-47's alone account for 40 to 50% of the German armor destroyed in the pocket, not the majority, but a plurality, more than any other single weapons system. The psychological toll is even higher. The soldiers who escape are broken, not just exhausted, traumatized. They have watched their units disintegrate under air attack, seen comrades burned alive in vehicles, survived by luck, not skill. Many desert. Others surrender at the first opportunity. The German army that retreats across the Seine in late August is a shadow of the force that defended Normandy in June, not because of casualties alone, because of the destruction of cohesion, morale, the will to fight. After the war, the victors study what happened. The Americans draw obvious conclusions. Close air support is decisive. Integration of air and ground forces is essential. Heavy firepower delivered with overwhelming volume is more effective than precision strikes. These lessons inform post-war doctrine. They shape the development of aircraft like the A-10 Warthog decades later. The Germans, or rather the few who survive in positions to analyze the defeat, reach different conclusions. Some blame Hitler's leadership, his refusal to allow tactical retreats, his insistence on counterattacks without adequate preparation. Others blame material inferiority. The Allies had more tanks, more aircraft, more ammunition. Both factors mattered, but German officers who fought in Normandy consistently cite air power as the decisive factor they could not counter. General Oberst Alfred Jodl, chief of the operations staff of the Armed Forces High Command, stated during his interrogation, "We knew we could not match Allied production. We knew they had more tanks, more artillery. We believed our superior tactics and training would compensate. What we did not anticipate was the effect of Allied air superiority, not strategic bombing. That hurt our production, but was survivable. The tactical air power, the fighter bombers, they made conventional military operations impossible. You cannot fight a battle when you cannot move your forces. You cannot defend when resupply is impossible. The P-47 and aircraft like it did not defeat Germany, but they made our defeat inevitable. This is the truth that emerges from the wreckage of Normandy. Tanks do not win battles by themselves. Artillery does not. Infantry does not. Wars are won by combined arms, by the integration of all capabilities. And in that integration, the ability to deliver massive firepower from the air at the point of contact, when ground forces need it, proves decisive. The P-47 Thunderbolt was not a miracle weapon. It was not invincible. Flak could and did shoot them down. German fighters, when available, could engage them. Dozens of P-47s were lost in Normandy, but the losses were acceptable because the results were overwhelming. For every P-47 lost, dozens of German vehicles were destroyed, hundreds of soldiers killed or captured, entire units paralyzed. The mathematics favored the Allies crushingly. To understand what the Germans faced, you must strip away the mythology and examine the cold mechanics of what happens when a P-47 attacks armored vehicles. This is not Hollywood. This is metallurgy, ballistics, and the ugly physics of war. A 50 caliber armor-piercing round at impact velocity carries enough energy to penetrate 19 millimeters of homogeneous steel armor at 500 meters. This is measured perpendicular to the surface. At an angle, penetration decreases. German tank designers understood this. They sloped armor whenever possible. The T-34's influence, angled armor, doubles or triples effective thickness. But effective thickness assumes the armor is continuous. It is not. A Panzer IV has cooling louvers over the engine. These are not armor. They are stamped steel gratings designed to allow airflow. A 50 caliber round passes through as if they are paper. Behind the louvers sits the engine compartment. Fuel lines, the radiator, the Maybach HL 120 TRM engine itself, all vulnerable. The P-47 pilot does not need to understand armor metallurgy. He aims for the rear of the vehicle, fires, some rounds hit solid armor, ricochet, or fail to penetrate. Others enter through louvers, exhaust ports, the gap between hull and turret. The laws of probability work in his favor. 200 rounds striking the same general area means dozens will find openings. When a 50 caliber armor-piercing incendiary round enters an engine compartment, several things happen simultaneously. The round itself is traveling at approximately 700 to 800 meters per second, reduced from muzzle velocity, but still supersonic. It strikes something. The engine block, a fuel line, the transmission. The kinetic energy transfers. Metal deforms. Fragments spray. And the incendiary compound ignites on impact. Temperature, approximately 1800 degrees Celsius. More than hot enough to ignite gasoline vapor, oil mist, hydraulic fluid. Fire in an enclosed space propagates rapidly. The engine compartment is not sealed. There are vents, gaps, connections to the crew compartment. Smoke fills the interior. The crew has perhaps 20 to 30 seconds to decide, fight the fire or abandon the vehicle. Most choose to abandon. They know what happens next. The flames reach ammunition storage. German tanks carry their main gun ammunition in racks along the hull sides or turret base. The heat builds. A round cooks off, explodes. This triggers a chain reaction. The entire ammunition load detonates. The turret can blow completely off the hull. This is not speculation. Photographs from Normandy show dozens of German tanks with turrets blown 10 or 15 meters from the hull. Aftermath of catastrophic ammunition explosions, some from artillery hits, many from fires started by 50 caliber incendiary rounds that entered through vulnerable points and ignited fuel. After the war, a myth develops. The P-47 could destroy any German tank, penetrate Tiger armor with 50 caliber fire. This is false. The myth persists because of combat reports. Pilots claim tank kills. Intelligence confirms destroyed tanks in the area. Therefore, the P-47 killed them. The logic seems sound. It is not. Post-war analysis reveals a more complex picture. Many tanks claimed as destroyed by P-47 guns were actually disabled by other means. Bombs, rockets, artillery, or abandoned by crews due to mechanical failure, lack of fuel, isolation from supporting units. The P-47s found them, attacked them, claimed them. The kills are technically valid, but the mechanism is not always direct gun penetration of main armor. What the P-47 actually did was create a combination of effects that rendered German armor combat ineffective. Mobility kills. The engine destroyed or damaged. The tank cannot move. In fluid combat, a immobile tank is dead. It will be bypassed, isolated, eventually destroyed by other means or captured. Mission kills. Damage that makes the vehicle unable to perform its function. Gun damaged. Optics. Destroyed. Commander killed. The tank is physically intact, but combat ineffective. And terror. This is not measurable, but it is real. A panzer crew that has been attacked by P-47s becomes cautious, hesitant. They know the sound of those engines, the sight of those wings. When they hear it, they react, stop, hide, wait. This caution, this fear, multiplied across hundreds of crews, reduces the operational effectiveness of entire formations. They move slower, attack less aggressively, break off engagements earlier. Not because of cowardice, because of rational survival calculation. The Germans tried to quantify this. After the war, American intelligence teams found German army reports analyzing combat effectiveness of units in Normandy. One report, dated August 19, 1944, from Corps, states, unit cohesion has degraded not primarily from casualties, but from continuous air attack. Personnel are reluctant to move during daylight. Tank commanders refuse to advance across open ground without infantry and air support, neither of which are available. Estimated combat effectiveness of armored units, 30 to 40% of establishment strength, but actual fighting capability is 15 to 20% due to psychological factors. 15 to 20%, not because the tanks are destroyed, because the crews are too afraid to use them effectively. This is what sustained air attack achieves, not the destruction of every vehicle, the paralysis of entire formations. The P-47's effectiveness rested on a foundation that the Germans could never match. American industrial capacity and logistical sophistication. Each P-47 required approximately 3,300 rounds of .50 caliber ammunition for a full load. A typical combat mission expended 1,500 to 2,000 rounds. The aircraft would then return, land, and need rearming. In Normandy, the 9th Air Force operated 16 P-47 fighter groups. Each group had approximately 75 aircraft. Assume 60 are mission-capable on any given day. That is 960 P-47s, each flying 2 to 3 missions per day. Call it 2,000 sorties per day. Conservative estimate, each sortie expending 1,500 rounds average. That is 3 million rounds of .50 caliber ammunition per day. The Americans delivered it every day. Ammunition ships crossed the Atlantic, unloaded at ports. The rounds were transported to forward airfields in Normandy, stockpiled, distributed to squadrons, loaded into aircraft, fired. The empty brass was collected, shipped back to the United States, remanufactured into new cartridges, and the cycle continued. This logistics system functioned flawlessly for months. The Germans could not do this. Even at the peak of their production, they struggled to supply frontline units with basic necessities. Fuel shortages were chronic. Ammunition was rationed. The Luftwaffe, by mid-1944, was operationally crippled, not because they lacked aircraft designs, but because they lacked fuel, trained pilots, and the logistics infrastructure to sustain operations. The Americans also had depth. If a P-47 was shot down, another replaced it within days. Pilots lost were replaced. A steady stream of replacements arrived from training schools in the United States. Experienced pilots rotated home after a set number of missions, ensuring their experience was passed to the next generation of instructors. The system was industrialized, efficient, sustainable. This is why the P-47 was decisive, not because it was a superweapon, because it was a good weapon, produced in vast numbers, supported by excellent logistics, flown by adequately trained pilots, and employed in a doctrine that maximized its strengths. The Germans had no counter, not because they lacked the technology, because they lacked the resources and the system. December 16th, 1944, the Ardennes Forest. Hitler launches Germany's last major offensive in the West, Operation Wacht am Rhein, Watch on the Rhine. The goal, break through American lines, reach Antwerp, split the Allied armies. The plan requires speed, surprise, and most critically, bad weather. Hitler times the offensive for winter. Low clouds, fog, conditions that will ground Allied aircraft. He knows that in clear weather, his panzers will be destroyed from the air before they reach their objectives. The Germans need at least a week of bad weather to have any chance. They get 3 days. December 16th through 18th. Fog, snow, ceiling too low for air operations. The German spearheads advance rapidly. American units, surprised and outnumbered, fall back. The situation is critical. December 19th. The weather begins to clear. Patchy at first. Then, on December 23rd, it breaks completely. Clear skies, unlimited visibility, cold. The temperature is -10 Celsius. The P-47's take off from bases in France and Belgium. The 9th Air Force launches everything. Thunderbolts, P-51's, P-38's, medium bombers. The mission: destroy the German columns advancing through the Ardennes. The results are catastrophic for the Wehrmacht. German supply columns, caught on narrow roads with snow on either side, cannot disperse. The P-47's attack in waves. The frozen ground prevents vehicles from going cross-country. They are trapped on the roads, sitting targets. By Christmas Day, the German offensive has stalled, not primarily from ground combat, from interdiction. Fuel trucks destroyed, ammunition convoys annihilated. The panzers, running out of fuel, abandon the advance. SS Obersturmbannführer Joachim Peiper, commander of Kampfgruppe Peiper, the most successful German unit in the offensive, described the collapse. We advanced rapidly the first 3 days, no air attacks. We believed we could reach the Meuse. Then the weather cleared. On December 23rd, we were attacked continuously, P-47's, all day. They destroyed our fuel trucks. Without fuel, the panzers are useless. We tried to continue on foot, impossible. By December 24th, we were out of fuel, out of ammunition, and surrounded. We destroyed our vehicles and fought our way back on foot. The Battle of the Bulge is often remembered for the defense of Bastogne, the 101st Airborne's heroic stand. This mattered, but the German offensive was broken primarily by air power, specifically by the massive application of fighter-bomber attacks once weather permitted. The P-47 played the largest role. More Thunderbolts participated than any other aircraft type. They flew the most sorties, expended the most ammunition, destroyed the most vehicles. Post-battle analysis by the U.S. Army estimated German vehicle losses in the Bulge at approximately 600 tanks and assault guns and over 1,000 trucks and support vehicles. Of these, approximately 40% were attributed to air attack. P-47's accounted for roughly half of those air kills. That is over 200 armored vehicles and 400 soft vehicles destroyed by Thunderbolt guns, bombs, and rockets in less than 3 weeks of operations. By May 8, 1945, VE Day, the war in Europe ends. The P-47 has been in combat for just over 2 years. In that time, Republic Aviation produced approximately 15,600 Thunderbolts. Of these, roughly 3,500 were lost in combat or operational accidents in the European theatre, a loss rate of about 23%, high by peacetime standards, acceptable in war, especially given the results. The claims: 86,000 railroad cars destroyed, 9,000 locomotives, 6,000 armored vehicles, 68,000 trucks. These are pilot claims, not confirmed, and the actual numbers are certainly lower. Historians estimate 50 to 60% of claims represent actual destruction, but even at 50% the totals are staggering. 3,000 armored vehicles, 34,000 trucks, 4,500 locomotives, 43,000 railroad cars. Beyond the numbers, the strategic effect. German logistics in Western Europe were crippled by sustained air interdiction. Fuel shortages, ammunition shortages, replacement shortages. Units at the front operated at 30 to 50% of authorized strength, not because of combat losses, but because the supply system was destroyed. Roads were unusable during daylight, railroads were cut repeatedly, bridges were down. The Wehrmacht could not sustain operations even when it won tactical engagements. This is the true measure of the P-47's success, not individual kills, the systemic destruction of German operational capability. The aircraft became a symbol. To American ground forces, it represented support, protection, the knowledge that if they got into trouble, the Thunderbolts would come. To the Germans, it represented doom, helplessness, the certainty that movement meant death. The P-47 was not the last of its kind. It was the first, the prototype for a new class of weapons, the dedicated close air support aircraft. After the war, the Americans retained the lessons. In Korea, the P-51 and then jets took over the fighter bomber role, but the philosophy remained: heavy armament, rugged construction, integration with ground forces. In Vietnam, the A-1 Sky Raider, a propeller-driven attack aircraft, served with distinction. It could not match jets for speed, but it carried massive ordnance loads, loitered for hours, and delivered precision strikes. The principles: survivability, payload, and persistence, all P-47 concepts. Then came the A-10 Thunderbolt II, named explicitly to honor the P-47, designed in the 1970s to destroy Soviet armor in Central Europe. It mounted a 30mm GAU-8 Avenger cannon, 7 barrels, firing 3,900 rounds per minute, 65 rounds per second, armor-penetrating depleted uranium rounds. Against tanks, vastly better protected than anything in World War II, the concept was the same: overwhelming firepower. The A-10 also inherited the P-47's philosophy of survivability: redundant systems, armored cockpit, engines mounted high to shield them from ground fire, able to fly with massive battle damage. In the Gulf War, 1991, A-10s destroyed more Iraqi tanks than any other weapons system. The echoes of Normandy, 47 years later. But modern war evolves: precision weapons, guided missiles, drones. The need for massed gun attacks decreases when a single missile can destroy a target from beyond visual range. The A-10 remains in service, but its role is debated. Some argue it is obsolete, vulnerable to modern air defenses. Others point to its combat record, its effectiveness in close air support. The argument continues. What is not debated is the legacy of the concept. That close air support, delivered with massive firepower by rugged aircraft, flown by trained pilots integrated with ground forces, is decisive. The P-47 proved this in the crucible of World War II. Every close air support aircraft since has followed the same template. The statistics are impersonal. Vehicles destroyed, tons of bombs dropped, sorties flown. But war is not fought by statistics. It is fought by human beings. Young men, most in their early 20s, who climb into aircraft and fly into storms of anti-aircraft fire, who watch their wingmen explode, who complete their missions and return or do not return. The average P-47 pilot in the European theater flew approximately 50 combat missions. Some flew over 100. Many did not survive 10. The attrition rate for fighter-bomber pilots was higher than for escort pilots. Ground attack meant flying low, within range of every weapon: machine guns, 20mm flak guns, 88mm heavy flak, small arms fire. A lucky rifle shot could hit a vital system. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Johnson, 56th Fighter Group, became one of the war's top aces. He survived being shot down over France, evaded capture, returned to combat. He described what it was like. Every mission, you know some of us will not come back. You do not know who. You try not to think about it. You focus on the job. Check your aircraft. Brief the mission. Fly, fight, return. And then you do it again the next day. Some men break under the strain. Most endure. A few thrive. I do not know which I was. I only know I survived. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe. The price the Germans paid was higher. Tens of thousands of soldiers killed in air attacks, not clean deaths, burned alive in vehicles, shredded by 50 caliber rounds, or simply killed by the stress, the terror, the relentless pressure of knowing that at any moment an aircraft could appear and there was nothing you could do. Some German soldiers later reported the psychological toll exceeded physical casualties. Men who survived physically were broken mentally. Shell shock, what would later be called PTSD, caused not by artillery or ground combat, but by the sustained fear of air attack. This is the cost that never appears in the statistics, the psychological destruction of armies. The men who survive but are never the same, who cannot sleep without hearing the sound of aircraft engines, who decades later flinch at the sound of a plane overhead. War damages everyone it touches. The P-47, for all its effectiveness, was an instrument of that damage. June 6, 2004, Normandy, France, 60th anniversary of D-Day. Veterans gather, old men now, in their 80s, American pilots, German soldiers. They meet, sometimes, at reunions. Awkward conversations, old enemies, but also strange respect. They share something, the experience of having been there, of having survived when so many did not. An American pilot, Robert Bob Powell, 365th Fighter Group, meets a German veteran, Heinrich Müller, former Panzer Grenadier, 17th SS Panzer Grenadier Division. The meeting is arranged by historians. Both men are reluctant, but they agree. They sit, talk, through translators at first, then in broken English and German. Powell describes what it was like to fly ground attack missions. We knew you were trying to kill us. We were trying to kill you. But there was no hatred. Not really. We were doing a job. When I saw a German column, I did not think about the men inside. I thought about the mission, the target. Afterward, sometimes, I would think about it. But during, no, just focus, survive, go home. Miller describes what it was like on the ground. We called you Jabos, fighter bombers. We feared you more than anything, more than tanks, more than artillery, because we were helpless. When you attacked, we could only hide, hope, pray. I lost most of my company to air attacks, not in one battle. Over weeks, a few men each day. By August, we were destroyed, not defeated in combat, just destroyed. They sit in silence. Then Muller asks, "Did you ever think about us, the men you were shooting?" Powell considers, "Yes, after the war, during, I could not afford to. But yes, I think about it now, all the time." They shake hands. What else is there to say? This, perhaps, is the final truth of the P-47 story. It was a weapon, designed by engineers, built by factory workers, flown by pilots, used to kill. It did its job with brutal efficiency. It helped win the war, shortened the conflict, saved Allied lives by making German resistance untenable. All of this is true, but it also killed, burned, destroyed, created widows and orphans, left men broken. This is also true. War is not clean. Weapons that win wars do so by dealing death. The P-47 Thunderbolt was very, very good at dealing death. 70 years after Ronsi, 80 years after Normandy, the P-47 is a museum piece. A handful fly at air shows, restored, maintained by enthusiasts who polish them until they gleam. When they start the engines, when the R-2800 roars to life, people stop and stare. That sound, deep, powerful, unmistakable. Old veterans, if any remain, remember, that sound meant support, or it meant death, depending on which side you were on. But the lesson remains. The principle the P-47 demonstrated, proved with blood and fire across the skies of Europe. Concentrated firepower, delivered with overwhelming volume by survivable platforms, integrated with ground forces, changes the nature of battle. It does not matter if the enemy has better tanks, better training, better tactics. If you can destroy his supply lines, paralyze his movement, kill his men from the air with impunity, you win. Not through superior courage, not through brilliant generalship, through the simple application of resources and violence until the enemy can no longer resist. This is not glorious. It is not heroic in the way old stories portray war. It is industrial, mechanical, the reduction of human conflict to mathematics. But it is effective. And in war, effectiveness is what matters. The P-47 was effective. Brutally, overwhelmingly effective. That is its legacy, not the romance of aerial combat, not the thrill of dogfights, the cold reality that in modern war, the side that can bring more firepower to bear, sustain it longer, and apply it more precisely, wins. Everything else is details. The Germans learned this lesson at Roncy, at the Falaise Gap in the Ardennes, across every battlefield where they faced Allied air power. They learned that courage without support is meaningless, that the best tank in the world is useless if it cannot reach the battle, that training and experience cannot compensate for being hunted from the sky by aircraft you cannot shoot down, carrying weapons you cannot counter. American ground forces learned a different lesson, that air support works, that the promise, if you need us, we will come, is real, that when the situation gets desperate, when you are outnumbered and outgunned, you can call for the Thunderbolts and they will arrive and they will deliver such firepower that the enemy breaks. This trust, this integration of air and ground became the foundation of American military doctrine for the next 80 years. Imagine, for a moment, you are there. July 29th, 1944, near Roncy. You are a German panzer crewman. Your tank is hidden under trees, engine off. You have been waiting for hours, listening. The sound of battle is everywhere. Artillery, small arms, explosions. But you are focused on one sound. Aircraft engines. You know if you hear that particular sound. The R-2800, the deep rumble of the P-47. You must stay hidden. Do not move. Do not start the engine. Wait until it passes. Then you hear it. Distant, growing louder. You look up through the trees. Four shapes, high, maybe 1,500 meters. Thunderbolts. They are orbiting, searching. You freeze. Do not move. Maybe they will not see you. The aircraft circle. One breaks off, begins descending toward you. You realize with cold certainty they have spotted something. Maybe your tank, maybe another vehicle nearby. It does not matter. They are coming. The lead aircraft rolls into its dive. You can see it clearly now. The distinctive shape, the large radial engine, the wings thick with guns. It is diving steeper, faster. You want to run. Cannot. Frozen. The aircraft is at 800 meters, 700. You see flashes from the wings. Then you hear it. That sound, like tearing metal. The roar of 8 machine guns firing simultaneously. 57 rounds per second. The ground around you erupts. Dirt, branches, metal fragments as bullets hit the tank next to yours. The impacts are deafening. Continuous, not individual shots. A roar. The aircraft pulls up, climbs. The second one is already diving. More fire, closer. You feel the impacts through the ground. Then the third, the fourth. It seems to last forever. In reality, perhaps 90 seconds. From the time the first aircraft opened fire until the last climbs away. 90 seconds of concentrated hell. When it is over, you're alive. Your tank is intact, but the vehicle next to you is burning. The crew is dead, and you know with absolute certainty that you were spared only by luck. That, next time, it might be your tank, your crew. There is nothing you can do to prevent it. Nothing. You are helpless. This is what it meant to face the P-47. This is what German soldiers experienced thousands of times across France in the summer of 1944. This is why, when historians ask what defeated Germany in the West, the answer includes many factors: Allied material superiority, German strategic mistakes, the courage of Allied soldiers. But high on that list, often understated, is the simple fact that the Germans could not move, could not fight, could not sustain operations, because from above, continuously, relentlessly, came the Thunderbolts, 8 50-caliber machine guns, 3,400 rounds per minute, delivering destruction they could not counter and could not escape. The P-47 did not win the war alone. No single weapon ever does. But it changed the terms, made German victory impossible, Allied victory inevitable through the simple, brutal application of firepower. That is the story. Not heroic, not glorious, just effective. And in war, effectiveness is measured in results. The results speak for themselves. Germany lost. The P-47 is why. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.